Welcome to the tutorial Reshaping Pencil Lines with the Pencil Editor tool. So before I begin, I'm just going to continue tracing the Karate Rabbit a little bit so that we have a few more lines to work with. So I'm just going to use the cutter tool to cut off a few of the ends here. So I use D to show strokes. I don't know where those ends were set to flat, but we rounded them out, so that looks pretty good. So you may have noticed that as I was drawing, I was using the contour editor to fix points along the central vector line. So if we select it again, and we click and we zoom in, we can see that there's a bunch of points along this vector line. But because these new pencil lines now have the capability of tapering and becoming thick and thin, so in other words, having something more than a uniform thickness, clearly we also want to be able to edit this exterior envelope or this exterior width that we see on either sides of the central vector line. So to do this, there's actually a new tool that you can use that's underneath the contour editor tool, and it's called the pencil editor. So you can obviously select it this way, or it also exists in the top menu under drawing, tools, pencil editor, and we see it checked here. So as you can see, now the points along the central vector have disappeared, and it went from being orange to this red color, and now we see a bunch of vector points along this exterior envelope. And if you notice, I can always select one and pull it to actually change that width. So if you decide that you'd like to change both sides of the envelope uniformly, you can actually hold down Shift while pulling on this point, and it expands uniformly on both sides. You can also delete points just as you did before to get rid of unnecessary points that you don't need. You can also use the keyboard shortcut Control on Windows or Command on Mac to add points to the pencil line envelope. The one thing you do need to know though is that you can't click on the edge of the envelope, but you actually click on the center line. So something like this. And you actually see that on the white arrowhead, a box with a plus sign appears. If you try to do the same thing on the edge of the envelope, it doesn't work. Just as with the contour editor tool, you can grab the line segment between 2 points and pull on it. But as you can see, it works slightly differently. Instead of pulling the segment between the 2 points outward, it actually adjusts the curve. So if you just want to move the segment between 2 points without it affecting the rest of the envelope, what you can do is hold down Shift, and now when you pull, it just pulls that one section. If we actually pull the line away for a moment, I just want to show you the ends here. This one has a flat head, so it's not really applicable. But if we zoom into this end right here, in fact, it looks a little strange. Let me just try to fix it with the contour editor. Okay, let's straighten that out. So if we go back to the pencil editor, you can see that it looks different from the tip of a brush stroke, which continues uniformly. There's a line crossing, almost like this cap has been added to what would otherwise be a flat end to the stroke. And then if we select one of the points, you can see that it has its own Bezier handle as well. So if we pull on that handle, you can see that we can actually extend this cap or the tip of the stroke to make it more tapered, for example. Or what you could do is if you hold down Alt, you can break the handle so that it no longer tries to make a continuous curve with this part of the stroke envelope. And you can make it much sharper, or you could even fold these arms down and make it completely flat, although at that point you would probably just select the entire stroke and change the start or end style. And just as we are able to adjust the handles on the tip, so are we able to adjust the handles throughout this entire envelope. Of course, I can always press Alt here and also break a handle somewhere in the middle of the stroke. I can also keep the handles aligned so that I can adjust the curve of the stroke. Also, if you have a Bezier point where the handles have been broken and you want to pull new handles from this point, you can hold down Alt and do so. You can also pull handles from a point with no handles by using Alt as well. So as you can see, the pencil editor is very similar to the contour editor. So now let's take a look at the pencil editor's tool properties. So the first thing that we see here is that you can select between marquee or lasso. You can also use the keyboard shortcut Alt to toggle between the two. So if I hold down Alt, all of a sudden I have the marquee. If I let go, I have the lasso. And then if I change my option here to marquee, when I hold down Alt, I'll get the lasso. So the first button that we see here under the operations is the smoothing operation. So if we click on that, you might notice that this line changed, that it became smoother. But the change was so imperceptible that maybe I should try to get it on a more obvious line. So let me draw a super squiggly line, then use the pencil editor to select it. So now it's selected because we see that red highlight. And then let me click on the smooth tool, and I don't know if you could see it again, but the points moved. Let's zoom in to look at it again. So if we undo and then redo, what's essentially happening here is that the number of points along the stroke are being reduced, and therefore the line or the envelope is becoming smoother. So the next thing we can take a look at is the pump pencil pressure button, and for this I have to actually select a group of points. So let me go back to this other line here, and let's see if we can find an area with some more saturated points actually. Okay, so maybe something like this. So if I select just these 4 points and I click on this button, I continually click on it, you'll see that it's inflating. And obviously this is different from the auto adjust thickness option that we saw in the pencil tools tool properties that allowed you to thicken a line or a stroke uniformly. With this pump pencil pressure button, you can select only a few points, or in other words a section of the line, and increase or decrease, as you can see if we use the button beside it, just that section. And in addition to this, not only can you thicken or thin just a section of the line, you can also thicken and thin sections of 2 lines. So let's see if I can trace several sets of points on both lines here. Okay, so I missed these points here. Let's try again. So something like that. So these 2 points are selected on this stroke, and these 4 points are selected on this other stroke. And then if I click on this pump button, you can see that it's inflating. So basically what I'm telling you is that you can inflate multiple lines or deflate multiple lines and multiple sections on multiple lines all at the same time. So the next operation in the pencil editor's tool properties is the merged line, and right now it's deselected. So let's select a line. Actually, let's delete this line here and then bring this line closer to this line right here. And then if we zoom in and we select both, actually this might not be such a great example because there's some confusion here with these 2 points being 2 different lines in this point. So let me use the contour editor to separate these lines so it's more clear what's going on. Okay. So if we go back to the pencil editor, we can select these 2 lines and select the merge line, and you can see these lines just got merged. And if you remember from the pencil tools tool properties panel, there's actually a line building option. So basically what I'm saying is that the pencil editor allows you to merge lines after the fact if you didn't end up using that build line option. So let's zoom out a little bit again. And then take a look at the next operation, which is the reverse pencil thickness. So for this we need a line that has an obvious thick and thin end. So let me try to draw another eyebrow for the Karate Rabbit using this tapered pen style. So let's use one with a more obvious taper. So this one right here. And let's make sure both the ends are round. Actually, let's make that round as well. Okay, so that, for example, we can see it's much thicker on this side and much thinner on this side. So if we go back to the pencil editor and we select this line and we click on this button here, we can see that automatically the thick part of the line is now on the opposite side and the thin part of the line is now on the opposite side to where it was just a few seconds ago. And if we click on it again, we can reverse, or in other words, it reverts back to the way it was before. So once again, just as we saw in the pencil tools tool properties panel where we're able to increase or decrease the minimum or maximum size of a stroke, we have those options as well in the tool properties panel for the pencil editor. However, you may notice that they're disabled, and that's because this min-max doesn't work for the entire stroke, but only for several points on a stroke. So if I select these 2 points, all of a sudden you'll see that this has become enabled. And I can lock these values together, or I can have them work separately. So for example, if I increased this value, you'll see that these 2 points now become wider because the minimum all of a sudden has become wider. And I can do the same thing for the maximum. I can decrease it, or I can lock these values together so that there's a uniform increase and decrease in values. You can also use the keyboard shortcuts Shift up arrow and Shift down arrow to change the width of these 2 selected points. So let me just put the focus back on the camera, double check that these 2 points are selected, and then use Shift and up to increase the width and Shift and down to decrease the width again. So we also have an opportunity to change the start and end shapes even after the fact, after we've created this line in the pencil editor's tool properties. So let me change this to flat and the end to flat as well. And if we deselect, and I'm actually going to hide lines as well, you can see that these ends have now become flat. You can also change the corner, of course, but unfortunately I don't have any examples here to use to show you. So lastly, we have the pen styles. So instead of being able to create a pen style through the tool properties, what we can do is select a line that's already been created and give it the pen style indicated in this drop-down menu. And of course, if we hadn't deleted the new pen style that we'd created, it would also be available in this list. So let's choose something really obvious like uniform pen style, where there would be no thicks and thins or tapers, and then click on this button here, Apply Pencil Template. So as you can see, our selected stroke now has no tapers and resembles the uniform pen style. So through the pencil editor's tool properties panel, you can still create pen styles, but you can do it in a different way. So let me undo what we just did, Actually, in fact, let me draw a whole other line with a very weird looking style. Okay, so say that's our stroke. We can select it, and then we can click on this button here, the new pencil template button. And then if we look at our drop-down list, we'll see there's a new pencil template there. Once again, we can rename it. So I'll name it my pencil 02 so that we don't get confused with the one that we made originally that we deleted, and say okay. And you can already see here that it has that kind of bulbous thicks and thins that we made in the middle, and that it has rounded ends. So then if we select the pencil tool and we try to draw using our new pencil style, you can see that it takes on the same properties of what this style had. I think the reason that it has chopped off ends is because we once again use the uniform pencil style as our base. So even though we had this selected when we clicked on the new pencil template button, it was still taking some of the properties from the uniform pen style. So that's easy enough to fix. We can go to this style actually in the pencil tools tool properties, and then we can change these to round. And now if we try to draw this again, we get this shape but with those round ends. And once again here at the bottom we have the texture portion of our line, but I'm going to get into that actually in the next video tutorial. So the one last thing that I wanted to show you is that you can actually select one of these pencil styles, copy it using Command or Control C, depending if you're using a Mac or a PC, select another line, and then use the paste function, so that's either Command or Control V, to paste that line style. So that's it for the tutorial, reshaping pencil lines with the pencil editor. Stay tuned for the next tutorial, adding textures and gradients to a pencil line.